What's going on? Dylan Conrad, Metabolic AF. Today I'm going to talk to you about structuring strength training, HIIT, and cardio around the menstrual cycle. Before I get into that, if you're watching YouTube, please like, subscribe, turn notifications on Spotify, iTunes, hit that bell button, leave a review. I have my notes in front of me. So the menstrual cycle obviously is divided into two parts. First, from part of bleeding to about 2 weeks afterwards, the follicular phase, and there's the luteal phase, which is the second 2 weeks, right before you get your period. So the overall, just how you're feeling, both psychologically and physically, does change between each phase, as well as your body's ability to build muscle, lose body fat is changing between each phase. But the good news is we can actually leverage changing up your training routine from week to week to really see better fat loss results, see better muscle building results, and just actually feel better overall, and especially psychologically when you feel like shit during the last second phase of your menstrual cycle. So of course, strength training. Why do you want to strength train? Number one is let's be real. Number one we care about is aesthetics, right? Women building glutes, building nice sculpted shoulders. You need to build muscle to actually achieve that, right? And so, besides just aesthetics in terms of strength training, we're also looking at joint health. We're looking at bone density. We're looking at overall hormonal function. We're looking at a lot of different factors. Okay, high intensity interval training. Why is that important for women to do? Now, first of all, is if we look at the nervous system. So, nervous system is divided into two parts: sympathetic, parasympathetic. We look at sympathetic, fight or flight, then we're looking at parasympathetic, rest and digest. If we can have a nice high intensity interval training, which is, if you look at the research on traditional HIIT, it's like 10 to 20-second, like all out, oh my God, Freddy Krueger is chasing me type of sprints, followed by complete rest periods, like doing nothing. So that like quote unquote HIIT class, that quote unquote Metcon class you're doing is not really traditional HIIT. So I'm talking about traditional HIIT in a sense. The biggest benefit of HIIT training is on the nervous system, right? And so because if we're in HIIT, we're going balls to the walls, you feel like you're gonna die, you're getting chased by Freddy Krueger, that is going to be a very, very, very deep fight or flight response. Super compensation, when you rest, especially later in the day, you're going to go deep into parasympathetic and rest and digest. Now, I say this all the time, right? If we're looking at the fat loss hierarchy, number one is hormonal balance, number two is recovery, right? So even if your training and nutrition are perfect, if you're not recovering and going deep into parasympathetic rest and digest, you're not going to see results, or you're not going to see as good results, right? So really exacerbating that energy system there is going to be phenomenal. Sorry, the nervous system. So that's number two. Number three, cardio. Why does cardio matter? Cardio matters for a lot of things. Fat loss, right? If we're trying to get into a deeper calorie deficit, if we want to make sure we are eating enough food during a calorie deficit, if we are looking at overall heart health, if we're looking at blood flow, if we're looking at a lot of things, but most thing we care about is fat loss, right? I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it here. We care about fat loss. So doing cardio will help you go in a deeper calorie deficit, or eat more food during a maintenance phase, or even a bulk phase. So if you're trying to build muscle, you want to keep your body composition very, very lean, it's good to do cardio because then you can eat more food, which will be swallowed into the muscles. When I cut people, I try to have them do more cardio instead of taking their food down, because I want to keep them as full as possible, and I want to be able to fuel the muscle and make the muscle look full as possible instead of cutting them super deep, 1,200-1,400 calories, and then they lose all the muscle and look like shit. Okay. So that's all three of those. That's why they are important, basically just overall as a woman, right? Some are from women to men, some are just overall, okay? Now, each woman is going to have a very unique cycle. So the individualized approach on this is very, very important, right? So, for example, a lot of women aren't 28 days exactly. And I always say normal menstrual cycle in quotes because the normal period is between 24 to 32 days, right? So if we're talking about a normal cycle, an individualistic approach is going to be needed because it's not 28 days no matter what. I can't just put you on a cookie cutter program, be like, hey, we're going to change it this day. We have to move and groove as different phases change. So you can measure your body's temperature, which a lot of women do when they're trying to get pregnant, because it shows you like when you're ovulating. You can do things like that to know when you're actually crossing over into that luteal phase, because the luteal phase basically begins when ovulation occurs, which is when your body temperature goes up, right? So let's talk about the phases, right? So we're talking about follicular phase, which is day 1 to your ovulation. And what happens here? Okay, a couple things. You have rising estrogen levels. You have relatively lower progesterone, okay? And you also are more insulin sensitive. So from a training standpoint, we can leverage that first part to be quote unquote our push week. This is where we do more volume, hit higher intensity, just do more concentrated work there, okay? So physiologically, you're gonna have better recovery, okay? So you're gonna be able to recover from workouts a lot easier. You're gonna have better energy levels, and you're gonna have way higher strength potential. So again, this is a great week, 2 weeks, a great phase to do your push week, okay? Now we're talking about luteal phase. So that's from ovulation to menstruation. This begins after you ovulate, right, until you actually hit your first day of your next period, okay? So what's happening here? Increased progesterone, increased estrogen. Estrogen's still there, but it's declining. So it's kind of flipped a little bit. And then you're going to have a lot less energy. You're going to have a lot more fatigue. Your recovery isn't going to be as good. And you are going to be craving carbohydrates a lot more. So another thing, but you're going to be also insulin resistant at this standpoint. Okay, so there's a lot of cool things we can do with strength training, specifically to actually leverage these two phases. Okay, so follicular phase, first 2 weeks, right when you get your period. Okay, we want to really focus on strength grades at strength. I can't speak today. Strength gains, and we also want to focus on progressive overload. So what's progressive overload? That's basically, I want to go back here a little bit because you should be on the same training routine for about 4 to 6 weeks, right? If you're like, oh, I need to mix it up and mess with it, it's like, dude, no, I'm not even gonna have that conversation with you right now, okay? You need to be on the same training program from 4 to 6 weeks. Each of those weeks, you want to go up in weight. So that's what progressive overload is. It's overloading your system to create an adaptation stimulus. So you increase strength, you increase your metabolism, you increase hormonal exchanges, stuff like that. Okay. So that's when we focus on strength gain and progressive overload, going heavier week to week. Now, if you do a 3-day split, but you work out 4 to 5 times per week, you're actually going to be doing, you're going to be able to go through the workout 3 times. So you'll be increasing 3 times before you hit your luteal phase. Okay. You really want to focus on compound movements at this point. You want to focus on your your heavy squats, your heavy deadlifts, bench presses, rows, and you can do higher intensity and volume. So what I mean by that is you want to do about 4 to 6 sets, 4 to 8 reps. Typically, that's going to be the best for this. And intensity-wise, you can push harder in terms of the weights you're hitting. And volume-wise, you could do a lot more sets and reps. Volume basically equals sets times reps, okay? Luteal phase, what do we want to do here? We want to adjust the intensity based on your energy levels, okay? Because you're not going to feel great every single day. And this is where we want to probably increase the rep range and reduce the weight a little bit. That's one option. The other option is you can actually take what's called a deload. So you can keep the weight high, but just shave a set off of each exercise. So instead of doing 3 sets, you do 2. Keep it really simple, okay? So either one of those works really well, depending on how you're feeling. So there's going to be days during the luteal phase you're going to feel like shit. Days that you feel okay. Okay, I'm going to do, heavy weight and I'm just going to drop a set off, okay? You want to incorporate more unilateral work, okay, versus compound movements, because it's going to be less taxing on your system. And you also want to do more accessory work, so like more single joint. So you'd be looking at like your glute kickbacks, you'd be looking at Jane Fonda's, you'd be looking at glute med hip thrusts, things where it's not that taxing on your nervous system, but it's still getting, machine hamstring curl, stuff like that, okay? On this, I suggest 3 to 4 sets between 8 to 12 reps. Okay, that's going to be the ideal switch in terms of what your rep range and your sets should look like here. Okay, and you don't want to focus on like hitting PRs. Like, don't worry about like maxing out your weight. You just want to focus on maintaining your strength. So whatever you built up to in week 3, just stay there and just get your movements in. Okay, so HIIT. Okay, how does HIIT work into here? So we're looking at your follicular phase and we're looking at your luteal phase. First, we're going to look at the follicular phase. And some water to excuse me here. So in terms of the HIIT, the follicular phase, we obviously can have higher intensity here, and we can also do higher frequency. So that's another thing I should have touched on in the strength section is that, say you do, 3 to 5 workouts a week. You can hit 5, and then you would hit like 3 to 4 during the luteal phase. Okay. Same thing with the HIIT, right? You can do more frequency, 4 to 5 times per week, and then 2 to 3 times per week during the luteal phase. So this would be 2 to 3 sessions per week, and you do either, you do want to keep your intensity pretty high. So this would be a good opportunity to do like 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 work to rest period. So that would be like I'm doing a 20-second all-out sprint on the Airdyne followed by a 10-second rest, or I'm doing a 10-second all-out sprint on the Airdyne followed by a 10-second rest. Okay, short, intense bursts followed by basically, pretty minimal rest. You would have what's called a negative work to rest ratio. Okay, luteal phase. Now here we want to reduce the intensity or the frequency of HIIT if you're feeling like shit. Okay, so again, this is gonna be a day-to-day thing that you're gonna have to adjust. Who the fuck is screaming in the background? What is that? It's a kid that's older than mine, so I don't have to worry about that. But this is lower impact HIIT options. Okay, this is where we also want to decrease the duration of intervals. So for here, we would do like 1 to 2 sessions per week with longer rest periods. So we would do like a 1 to 2 work to rest ratio. So that'd be like a 10-second all-out sprint and then a 20-second complete rest. Okay, so that kind of wraps up what the HIIT should look like for you and your cycle specifically. Okay, now we're looking at cardio. Okay, follicular phase, we want to do higher intensity, steady state, or moderate to high intensity interval training, right? MIIT. Okay, you can include more high demanding cardio sessions like running and cycling here during the follicular phase, right? Things that are just like harder on your body. Okay. Luteal phase, we want to shift our focus to more lower intensity, steady state, active recovery. Things like walking, things like swimming, taking a hike, yoga. These can be really, really good for your cardio at that point. You want to prioritize consistency over intensity for sure during your luteal phase, just to maintain your cardiovascular health, not overtax the body, not try to increase the amount of calories you're burning. Just be smart about it. Okay. So you want to make sure that you're tracking your cycle and making sure that does correlate with your training routine. Extremely important. And make sure you're listening to your body, especially in the luteal phase. That's going to be so key, listening to your body and adjusting when you need to. So if you feel like shit, back off a little more, stuff like that. Okay. Obviously, nutrition, I will dive into that in part 2. I'm going to make it, this is part 1. So part 2, I'm going to talk about nutrition. I'm going to talk about hydration. And then part 3, we'll talk about lifestyle and recovery. Okay. If you're having issues, right, like cycle irregularity, hormonal imbalances, see a doctor. That's number 1. Get some answers, see what's going on. And yeah, get some blood work done. See an endocrinologist, see a functional medicine doctor. Functional medicine doctor, I would actually do both if you could, if you have the time and resources. The reason why is the functional medicine doctors will do more detailed and specific. Make sure when you get your blood work, you do it first thing of the day. I'd also recommend just taking a general hormonal assessment like we give all our clients. We do that monthly, and that's just a questionnaire. Okay. If you're having trouble taking off days, I get it. It's hard sometimes. Sometimes like I'm ready to go. Like I want to get into it, right? That's when you can really switch to you can still, if you think about your off days, you can still focus on your step count. You can still focus on stretching, foam rolling, soft tissue work, getting massages, stuff like that. And if you're having trouble staying motivated, that's what I tell my clients, focus on the habits rather than motivation, right? Preparation is number 1. Then number 2 is just going to be the actual just getting it done, relying on your habits, just like brushing your teeth. Okay. So hope this helps. I thank you guys all for tuning in here. I have I'm going to create a freebie, not yet now, but I will have one in the future of like how to align it. But I've made multiple posts on training during your menstrual cycle so you can align your strength and your HIIT and your cardio with it. Yeah, so I'm going to come out with part 2. That's going to be mainly nutrition around your quote unquote normal menstrual cycle. But this is going to be key. I've always said it, if you're not on a training program that's working with your hormones, not against them, like you're not going to see results. And if you do, they're going to be very, very slow. So you're already putting in the work smarter, get the right plan for your cycle specifically, and not harder. Love y'all. Enjoy the rest of your day.